Robert Scott Bell Show.
Robert Scott Bell Show.
Bonus time. It's Extra Innings of the Robert Scott Bell Show, special edition, Advanced Medicine Monday. I want to remind everybody listening, you can get more of this in person in Philadelphia. First opportunity, September 21st and 22nd. And that is advancedmedicineseminars.com. It's linked up through the show notes at robertscottbell.com. Welcome, one and all. Welcome back, Dr. Buttar. Welcome back, Liam Scheff.
So, Liam, just continue with that same thought process, because this is very intriguing. And my whole point was that if an individual's cleaned up his life, even if because this doesn't even exist, it's going to be very easy for a person to test negative. And I know that's not the important thing, because if it doesn't exist, there's nothing positive and negative to really look at. But still, it explains why this man, who before in my world, in the world of almost all physicians, it's impossible to seroconvert back to HIV negative if you've been positive any time. But in actuality, based upon what you said, it's very, very easy to see that possibility now, because it never existed in the first place.
Well, the problem with it is it's a non-specific test, and if you've been pregnant, you're producing anti-self, essentially, proteins that will click the test over. And it doesn't mean you're sick. If you've ever had a drink, ever been injected, the test in the medical literature comes up positive in mice. And then they say, we're very surprised because these mice aren't HIV positive. Well, no, duh. And it comes up positive in dogs, and then cow protein.
Were these gay mice and gay dogs? Or
No. They're lab. It was, no, and again, it's not about gay, because it's about...
Liam, it was a joke. It was supposed to be a joke.
Oh, sorry. But what happened? Yes, they were gay mice and gay dogs. Yeah. They were actually. It was Tom Hanks and that guy in that show, Bosom Buddies, and they. Yeah. But the problem about worrying about seroconverting, you're not really, because your friend, like I said, if I took my blood and I diluted it to the point at which they want it to be diluted, and I probably would be negative, or not. I would be not actually negative. It's not a plus and a minus. You know this because you work in this stuff. It's actually a graded scale, and we're all a little bit reactive, and once you're above a certain point of reactivity with the same proteins, you're considered positive. But if you're just a little bit below it with the same proteins, you're negative, but it's the same thing. So what really makes it positive and negative is an interpretation. So there's nobody in the world who's viral load negative. You can't, unless you're not producing cells anymore and there's nothing to measure. Everybody tests reactive on tests for this non-thing, because the test. So I could test your friend today with a certain number of tests, and I could still get him to be reactive. And then I could test him with another variety of tests and get him to be less reactive. And when he went back in, I don't know. It was his lucky day. His heart and soul were working in the right place. And maybe what happened was he said, I'm a heterosexual and da-da-da-da-da-da. And they said, oh, well, you're not at risk. Because that happens too. And I have an acquaintance who knew this information. He went into 2 places in New York. He went into one and said, which was the truth. I'm a heterosexual male in my 20s, and no, I don't do any drugs. Then he went into another clinic in another part of town and said, I'm a gay male in my 20s, I have a lot of boyfriends, and I do drugs. He had one negative result and one positive result. So, I think nobody should to ever take these tests. I don't think people should try to become negative. I think they should try to become healthy. I think what we need to do is essentially form a community of people that says this is an outdated test. We no longer have any it has clearly no medical value, because the medical literature says, and it's been saying for 30 years, there is no standard for determining the absence or presence of HIV. That's what it says.
Here's the thing. I grew up doing my internship and residency in Texas. I spent a lot of time at Baylor doing my year at Brooke Army Medical Center, Fort Sam Houston, which is where the Institute of Surgical Research was. That's why I was doing my first year postgraduate training in general surgery. After internship, I'd been to Korea, hardship tour, came back and was doing my general surgery residency there. Spent a lot of time at Baylor. About half the year was spent at Baylor. And Ben Taub Hospital in Houston is a big gun and knife club, or knife and gun club as we refer to it. And 35% of the people that are coming into the trauma area, by definition, were HIV positive, meaning penetrating trauma, gunshot wounds, knife wounds, that type of stuff. More than 1 out of 3 was HIV positive. And then when you're operating on these people and you've been operating for 36 hours straight, and then you're on call every other night or every third night, and you're operating and sleeping and operating and operating, sleeping, and operating, sleeping. Things get a little blurry, people get clumsy, and they are all sorts of needle sticks. I think I was stuck maybe 15 or 16 times intraoperatively with the needle, because as I was getting handed the scalp, the hemostats with the suture or the suture drivers, or I was handing to somebody else or whatever during the operation. And again, these aren't controlled environments. This is a trauma environment, so it's messy, et cetera, et cetera. We would get stuck, and we actually had HIV tests done every 60 days, the surgery residents did, in order to make sure that we hadn't become HIV positive. And with the number of times I've been stuck with needles that were contaminated, I always thought to myself, why didn't I get HIV? Because it's probably been, I think they say it's a 2-year window after your last exposure, and these are needles actually going in, drawing blood, everything, getting this happening. And my last needle stick with an HIV positive patient was probably in 1995, 1994. So in 1996, 1997 was that time frame that, I was looking for to make sure that I still was negative. Because in my mind, again, I'm a physician, I'm believing the same things.
Sure, whatever incubation could be hanging out, it's going to show up later. As they said, it kept prolonging. But this reminds me, Dr. Buttar, of something maybe you're not aware of as well in the whole history, and it's written about in the chapter in Official Stories on this Nancy Padian, or Padian. How do you say it, Liam?
I say Padian. She says, I think Padian, yeah.
Yeah. There's a series of studies that she did about this so-called seroconversion of discordant couples, one being supposedly positive, one being negative, and they followed X number of years of all of these couples to find out, hey, how many times can we determine that in a heterosexual relationship, is there some sort of transference, similar to like this so-called the pinpricks, the needle sticks? They're not related necessarily to sexual exchanges, but in this case it was, and the shocking result of this, Liam, I'll let you say it.
Right. So 175 couples doing it vaginally, I assume orally and anally, admitted, up to 40%. They're couples before they come into the 6-year observation study, so they were, God knows how long they were couples. 175 of them banging away at 175 so-called positives and negatives, so 350 people, if I did that right. Mm-hmm. And after all the years went by, none of them, zero was the number of the people who were negative became positive. Why? Because they kept out IV drug users. Now, I loved your description of the knife and gun club, because when you're in a knife and gun club, a lot of the people coming in are I'm just going to guess, are probably living kind of on the low-life side of things, that maybe they're poor.
Oh, almost all of them are.
Right, maybe in gangs, so they're going to be exposed to drugs, they're going to have poor nutrition, they're going to have all of the problems and I don't know, handicaps of poverty, which increases your antibody titer. They're also, guess what they are? They're targeted for testing. That's why their so-called status, or maybe you bring them in, they just have high antibody titers. I don't, because I never injected a drug, and I haven't had an injection of a vaccine for 3, I don't know, a long time. So if you avoid injections, you don't spike your antibody. If you take a lot of injections, you do a lot of drugs, if you have a porous gut, if you have a leaky gut, you have a high antibody titer, because you're leaking stuff into your bloodstream, and your body has no defense but to coat these things with antibodies, try to get them out of the body. It's not that's really a secondary immune system. Your primary immune system's in your gut, trying to keep these poisons out, flush them through the bowel. But yeah, I don't think there's been one case in history where, somebody developed AIDS because they were stuck with a needle. You can test people all day long, but the test is an artifact of a belief. The reality is that AIDS is what happens when you begin to destroy people's immune systems, which is what you do after you test the people who you say are at risk.
Liam, you do it emotionally and spiritually, not just physically with this stuff. I mean, I can talk about AZT and the history and what happened, and even the milder forms of chemo that they still use, but it's an emotional and spiritual assault on these people.
It is. The gay community, the number of people dying went down from, I think, 86 to 87. It was going down. It was a little above 10,000. They introduce what is it? GlaxoSmithKline introduces a chemotherapy drug. It's a bone marrow suppressing drug. It's a liver bomb. It destroys the liver, destroys the bone marrow where you produce blood. These guys are already coming in, iron weak, porous guts. They give him a bone marrow suppressing drug called AZT in 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 milligram doses, 1.5 grams a day. For this is supposed to be for life. It's chemotherapy. It's cancer chemotherapy for life. Chemical, mustard gas warfare kind of stuff. It's World War I going on in their bodies. They died. These guys died in 3 weeks or a month. Some guys died in a week. Keith Haring, according to, I'm not going to get his name right now, but according to one of the members of ACT UP, went on I think DDL, 3TC, one of the analogs to AZT, died in a week on this drug. He wasn't sick. He tested positive, was afraid, went on the drug, died. Arthur Ashe, AZT, died. So the death rate went up from about 12,500 to about 45,000 people a year by 1993, 4 and 5. And then they pulled AZT out of the market in a high dose and knocked it down to about 100 milligrams. They still give it. They still give it to pregnant women. So, the whole thing is a giant pharmaceutical mess, but if you believe the HIV, there is no test for HIV. Nobody in my mind is HIV positive. I don't even believe it is a term. I think it's if they are, it's because they either want to be or they haven't been told that the test has no value. But there are people who've been told the test has no value who want to be, and I believe it's because they feel they get benefits from it. They have a certain psychological thing going on that they feel.
We have talked to people, in fact, on the show that have, for instance, gotten subsidies because they maintain that status, housing subsidies, drug subsidies, other things, and they weren't willing to give it up, so that they rejected it because there was an economic incentive to be positive.
All right. So I kind of sat with a gay guy in his mid-late 50s in New York City, Babylon, New York City, where everything happens. And these guys in their 50s are living like young men in their 20s. They're going out and, finger quote in the air, partying, which means having sex with a lot of different people. That's what it means. And playing is actually another term in the gay. Oh, we're going out to play. So imagine that you're 50 and you're married and you have a wife and you just say, oh, we're going out to play. We're going out to play. We're both going to have sex with people that we meet at the club. We may have sex with 2 or 3 people. You're going to get STDs. You're going to have problems. But beyond that, I think there's a psychological kind of unease that happens. You're like, holy crap, I'm connecting with people, but I'm not connecting, and I feel anxious. And somebody tell me I'm okay. Somebody tell me I'm okay. So you go in and you go to the confessional, which is the HIV thing, and you go and you say, well, Your Eminence, or whatever, well, Father, I've sinned. I've had sex with 5 people that I don't know. Am I infected? Am I blessed? Or am I cursed? And this, by the way, there are dissertations written in HIV clinical studies about how HIV testing is exactly like the old Christian confessional. You go in to a darkened place, reveal your secrets to one person, and you need to go back every 6 months. It's funny, Dr. Buttar said they somehow pushed it up to 2 years. The standard, you're supposed to know it within 6 months, which is hysterical. It's hysterical to think that you would have to wait 6 months to know if you had an STD. Let me tell you, if you've ever had one, you know immediately. Ouch. Ouch. Shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm. That's the only one where you don't have any sign where the organs of the sexual arena exist.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And then they say, oh, it's 2 years later, I could still be suffering from. But doesn't that tell you that what you're suffering if you buy into that and you keep doing it for the sexual thing, you're suffering the guilt or the shame or the anxiety about maybe, I don't know, being just so unmoored and ungrounded. I'm not judging anybody because I grew up in that culture. I am not judging anybody for any kind of behavior. I'm saying that it will provoke anxiety responses, and you'll need to go get those soothed. And if you don't believe that sex is something that is important and should be protected, I'm not saying you got to get married for life. I'm just saying that it is important. It's not just recreational. It actually means something. You're going to provoke those deep anxiety centers, and you're going to need somebody to tell you that you're okay or not. And if you go to these HIV priests, they'll kill you.
Well, it's
just amazing when you think about it, because you just said that about the sexually transmitted disease. If you've had it, you know you've had it, and to wait 2 years. But that's exactly the fear mongering that is so typical in our society, from everything economic, health, wellness, food. I mean, every aspect. It's that creation of that fear that keeps everybody in check. And this was just another example of that.
It's a fear. Yeah, I was just teasing you about that. I appreciate your long silence. I was feeling for the audience a little bit.
No, it was fantastic. And I've called it the death stick of the Western culture. Those times where you could be in the so-called primitive cultures where they have the one medicine man or whatever, the voodoo man, whatever you want to call it, they point the death stick, and in 3 days the people are dead. And it is that kind of scenario that has happened early on within the so-called HIV death cult that we call it now. It isn't based on sound science, but it's based on black magic.
Yeah, Michael Elner pointed that out. He said it was like the Aboriginal bone pointing. The Greeks used to break a pot, and the pieces would be called ostrakai, and anybody that you'd ostracize them. Literally, they'd get the wrong piece of the pot. That they would find a way to fix it. That the guy that you didn't want in the city anymore would get the piece that was like the smallest piece or the largest, whichever it was. So this is an ancient practice: finger pointing, ostracizing, scapegoating. You're the witch hunting. It was done in the 1500s, 1400s. The Malleus Maleficarum was called the witch's hammer, and it was written by a monk. It's attributed to 2 monks, and it said, "We're being beset by witches, and you don't know who they are, and you only know if you put them all to the test. Anybody you suspect, you put to the test." Well, what was happening at that time was that the church in Rome was so heavily taxing the satellite nations of Europe, which weren't nations of Europe then, they were satellites of the Roman Church, that people in those areas were becoming like, I want to say Erasmus, I might be getting that wrong, but like Wycliffe and Martin Luther were standing up and hosting open rebellions against the Pope in Rome. Martin Luther called the Pope in Rome that pretender, he called him that Antichrist in Rome, which is just an amazing thing to say about the most powerful man in the world and not be killed. But Martin Luther ended up with support of his town or his city people and the local duke and such. Because they didn't want to have their money taken anymore and siphoned off to Rome, so they supported him. But the monks said, "Oh, there are witches among you." Now, the reason you do that is to get a population to turn inward on itself. Oh, there are witches among you. You don't turn against the Pope. Don't turn against the taxation. Don't turn against bad governance. You have to turn against yourselves. And that's what happened in 1983. It wasn't the drugs that you're taking, the drugs that we've let you take, the drugs we've given you, the lifestyle that we've encouraged you to have that has no moral compass, no moral boundaries, no social good coming out of it, really, no emotional good coming out of it. Don't worry about any of that. Don't worry about pesticides. Don't worry about industry. There's a witch among you, and you can't see it. And you won't see it for 2 years. Keep coming back and asking us if you have the witch. Keep coming back.
Stunning. And we've talked in terms of modern medicine, Dr. Buttar, many times we brought this up, being more like a religion or a cult. And it's playing itself out like that. The thing is, it's ancient history, but it's also modern science. And that's what it's the same pattern that's repeating.
It's just amazing that it's on such a great scale and so widespread, because this phenomena isn't just affecting the American population, as most of these phenomena that we've discussed, and of course having some outreach to nations beyond us. But this HIV aspect, I mean, this is global. And, when you start looking at it from the practical aspect that you've just drawn out, Liam, now you start understanding that those in Africa, for example, severe poverty, severe malnutrition, severe exposure to the elements and to various types of pathogens. They don't have clean water. They don't have sustainable food. In fact, half the time they don't have any food. And so they are going to be the perfect vector to suffer from this type of creation. And it's global. It actually has an impact to every aspect, every individual on the planet.
Yeah, it's wild. That was 85. The CDC sent over Joseph McCormick who wrote about it in his book, Level 4 Virus Hunters of the CDC. And they had a meeting in Bangui, which is the capital of the Central African Republic, which is the old Congo. And the old Congo is where King Leopold of Belgium enslaved people, cut their hands off, just had his emissaries, his sergeants, just brutally murder Africans for not working hard enough as slaves. So this area of the world had seen the brutality of the human species on itself. So they go there and they say, well, we need to start counting cases of this new AIDS thing. Like, really? In the Congo and in Idi Amin's Uganda, Idi Amin, who, under him, tens and tens, maybe 100 of thousands of his citizens were butchered and murdered. And then in South Africa, where the Dutch government had murdered untold thousands and essentially enslaved into Bantustan, tin shack towns with no clean water, with pits, latrine pits, emptying into the river. This is where we want to start counting this so-called same disease that affected very, very isolated, ghettoized men in the gay community in America, in Paris. Really? And they said that the only thing we need to do to count cases was look for 3 major signs, and you just name them. Weight loss, diarrhea, and fever or itching and coughing. So talk about tuberculosis, malaria, dysentery, sepsis. And when you deregulate the immune system, you don't feed a body, it's got no glutathione, no selenium, all of the, I'd say, constrained elements of the ancient genome pop out. So people end up just covered in herpes sores. And there are doctors and nurses over there. There's citizens over there who reverse this. They give people olive oil, garlic, lemon juice, and beet solutions with sea salt. And remarkably, this, which is high in glutathione, essential fatty acids, they add some essential fatty acids to it, and all the beta carotene, other things you need from these whole integral organic essential superfoods, manage to reverse all of the manifested illness in people. But the governments over there really, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. Because they don't get money for helping people get better. They get money from the AIDS cabal that goes in and says, show us how many cases you have. Now, I got one last thing on this. Terry Michael, who I think we'll have on the show this week, just went to the AIDS International AIDS Conference back in America for the first time in, 20 years, and asked Françoise Barré-Sinoussi, who's the co-recipient of the Nobel Prize with Luc Montagnier for so-called discovery of what they called LAV, which is a lymph node swelling, associated virus, which was later recombined in a title with HIV. This was all very political stuff. Anyway, Luc Montagnier has said on the record, we can be exposed. Here, I'll do my Luc Montagnier. Yes. You can be exposed to HIV many times without being chronically infected. He said, if you have a good immune system, you can your body can get rid of the virus. So he said on camera, if you have a good immune system, your body can get rid of whatever we think you have. And Terry Michael stood up and says, hey, what do you, he said, it was really eloquent. We'll play it like on Wednesday, whenever he's on the show, Thursday. He just asked it in sort of brilliant clinical terms. What do you think about your colleague, Nobel Prize winner, saying you can be? It's about the blood immunity. It's about the strength of the body to deal with what. It's not the blasted, insuperable, made-up virus. It's how well a person's own body is working. And she sort of fumbled the answer. It was sort of irrelevant what she said. It was just to ask the question in that room full of.
It was stunning.
If I say scoundrels, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, again, this transforms the whole terrain, and we hope, and through advanced medicine, Dr. Buttar, it's not only addressing the so-called real ailments, the chronic toxicological and degenerative inflammatory diseases that we talk about, but it's also helping people to, I guess, detach or decouple or maybe be deprogrammed from the cult of not science, but as Liam Scheff calls it, scientism.
Well, it's music to my ears because, as you know, Robert, you've read the book numerous times, and you know that my whole premise of everything that I do, it's all based on toxicity. And to me, I have made that statement already. I've proven it. We've documented it. We've had patients from every gamut and the untreatable conditions such as autism, cancer. I've said that if you can effectively detoxify the body and reduce, and that's the key operative word, effectively. Detoxify the body. In other words, reduce the toxic load and improve the nutritional basis of an individual to the way that it's supposed to be, that chronic disease by definition cannot exist. I don't care whether stage 4 cancer, whatever it is, we've reversed it. So now HIV, you've actually gone on and said the same thing. So there is no non-curable condition on this planet. And I've long believed that the Creator would not have ever put a, quote, pathology on the planet without its cure already being here.
I think we can heal from many, many, many things. I give it up to the powers that be to, take us away when we're supposed to be taken away. It's not up to us to know. And I do look at the big plagues that happen on the planet as sort of part of the natural process of the planet. But I got to tell you, they happen quickly. Like in a couple years, you'll lose half the population of a continent. But what's happened with so-called HIV in Africa is that every country that was supposed to be gone by 1990 had doubled and then tripled population. So give me a break, This is the same old eugenics mindset that Thomas Malthus was writing about when he said those dark-skinned people are having non-Christian sex. They're having too many kids. And so Africans are rising up and coming up with naturally fermented, really, really, really healthy, biologically active drinks that have superfoods and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going to butcher the name, Umlingo Wamangolosi. It says curing AIDS by being healthy, and this is a movement going on, being sort of headed by Africans for Africans.
Yes,
they're taking this, and you can make it at home, and it's an incredibly healthy food product, and we would sell it here in bottles and charge $45 for the privilege of having 30-day supply. So you can make it at home too. Anyway, maybe we'll link to that for the show.
Absolutely. Back in the early '90s, I was able to go to Nigeria and Ghana, and I met with the health professionals there as a homeopath, as a holistic guy. And I told them, go back into the bush and save the medicine of your ancestors. We have screwed it up in the West. Do not be like us. Do not do what we have done. Save your medicine. And they were shocked, stunned by the message that I came, because they were used to the white man coming there to tell them all the knowledge and how great what we have done is. And I said, no, we've screwed it up. Go back into the bush and save your medicine. It sounds like they're getting the message.
Yeah, a lot of them are. And the mainstream has so little to say that's reasonable about AIDS. If you say we treated somebody, they reversed their immune deficiency, and you don't even worry about the make-believe HIV test, because don't worry about it. But we reversed, this person's healthy, they've had a kid, they're doing great. The mainstream has one word for people who do this. Robert, shall I give it to you?
Yes, please.
No, you go ahead. You say it.
Oh, no. This is for you, Liam. You're a special guest here in Extra Innings.
What do they call people who don't believe them?
Deniers.
Deniers of science. They call them AIDS denialists, and they liken them to Holocaust denialists. So their argument is only this resilient. If you don't believe us, if you manage to get healthy, which we say we're interested in, but if you don't believe us that you're forever infected with some garbage because somebody bit a monkey or had sex with a monkey somewhere in... Now they've backdated it, by the way, to the gold rush, 1880s. No, I'm serious. Like HIV was now invented in the 1880s when somebody bit a monkey or cut a monkey or something like that. The Dave Chappelle. I got to take a line from Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, very funny comedian. You guys know Dave Chappelle?
I've heard the name.
Yeah.
All right. The Chappelle Show, very, very funny, really wild, and he's doing his act, and he's saying, AIDS, isn't that a B? These scientists, though, they don't even know what it is. They say that it came when a guy had sex with a monkey, and he goes like this: guy had sex with a monkey and then had sex with his wife, and he says, wait a second, once you go to have sex with a monkey, you've more or less taken yourself outside of the human sex game. Like, honey, I got to go have sex with that monkey again. All right, baby, just be back before. No, like, you're out.
Yeah,
That's
you're not coming back.
You're not coming back. So it's just you and the monkey from then on. And he does a really funny bit on it. But if you just apply even sort of street corner logic to it, the whole thing falls apart, like he just did. Like, give me a break with the sex with the monkeys. So now they backdated it to when somebody was carving a monkey up and accidentally cut themselves. Well, Dr. Buttar says that this happens all the time in the operating room. People stick themselves all the time. Got to tell you, the body's a lot smarter than our heads are. And the body isn't worried about, we can recover from a lot of stuff. What we can't recover from, though, is carpet bombing our intestines with chemotherapy for years and years.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
All right.
Man, what an amazing extra innings, Dr. Buttar, man. Thanks for hanging in with us. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure all of those that listen and love to listen to the Advanced Medicine Monday segments of the Robert Scott Bell Show, getting this through Medical Rewind, probably are blown away right now having heard the show plus the extra innings, because you've been opened up to a whole other realm of understanding what Dr. Buttar's been saying for years and writing about, that it's all toxicology. And we were duped on this, we were duped on that, until one day we wake up and go, the whole thing was a dupe.
Well, it is music to my ears, like I said, and I appreciate you, Liam, helping us to bring this to our audience, which is, every one of these shows. I think there's different audiences, and I know for my followers, for the people that are my listeners, and that Robert and I cater to for at least our market, our sector, the Advanced Medicine Mondays. For them, this will be definitely eye-opening, and it'll help them to understand, and it's actually been eye-opening for me too, but it'll help them to understand the basis of what I'm talking about, because I'm talking about from my frame of reference. I have never talked about HIV because I really haven't had that many HIV patients. I've only treated maybe 2 or 3. All of them seemed like they got better. We didn't bother doing titers before and after or anything like that. But it is common sense that if you improve the status of the body and you improve and clean up the terrain, as Robert likes to talk about the gut as being a terrain, then by definition you're going to have an improvement. It's amazing to me that a patient will walk into my office and they'll be weak and they've been on chemo and they're nauseated, they're losing their hair, and we don't even do anything for the first couple of days. We're just giving them some nutritional IVs, taking them off some of their ancillary medication that they've been put on to control some of their symptoms, and seeing if we can manage it with things that are less impeding to their physiology. And in 1 week, you see these people stronger, feeling better. They have color in their face. They're able to stand up. They're actually able to ambulate often on their own, whereas before they were in a wheelchair. And so what you're saying just takes that last little component that, I don't have any experience with, having treated only 2 or 3 patients, and validate everything that I've been doing clinically. It's like hearing the Bruce Lipton was first time. For me, I just laughed. I was driving my car. One of our mutual friends, Robert Alden Butcher, had actually his set to listen to, and I'm driving and I'm listening to these CDs, and I started laughing because what I had observed clinically is what Bruce Lipton is talking about in his in his program, The Biology of Belief. And what was the most amazing thing to me is that everything he was saying, it's not that it was making sense to me, but I was realizing that I have clinically proven what he is theorizing, or what he has clinically established and proven it. And that's why I was laughing, and it was so funny to me, because here I've been doing something and had no idea what I was doing. He was now putting the story or putting the words to what I'd already filmed.
Yeah. And
this was the next step to that.
Yeah, and brilliantly in an academic type setting and way, which was also amazing, because he utilized the science against those who tried to deny that kind of reality and epigenetics, etc. So yeah, we've entered into a new realm, a new frontier, and it fits all too well with the concept of advanced medicine, what you've been doing for years. I want to remind everybody, if you're just now listening, we're wrapping up the extra innings version of the Robert Scott Bell Show, Advanced Medicine Monday. We do this every Monday with Dr. Rashid Buttar. We invited Liam in. It's been fantastic as well. And Liam's book is available, Official Stories. You can check it out through liamscheff.com or CreateSpace. We have those linked up as well. Those of you who plan to come to the Advanced Medicine Seminar in Philadelphia, we hope to have a number of copies there for you to get on site, so we'll working on that as well. And Dr. Buttar, anything else to wrap it up, because this has been like a super bonus?
No, I'm just glad we were able to do it, and I appreciate you, Robert, suggesting it, because I think it's great and it's going to be well received by everybody.
And Liam, man, thanks for staying around with us. This was an awesome segment.
I'm grateful. This is Dr. Buttar's scheduled time. I'm a fan. Now I'm a super fan. He's incredibly generous, and it's just good to hear. Look, that medicine needs a future, right? That not everybody's going to go off the rails and sort of just start composting, doing all their own stuff. We need doctors who get this. We do need doctors. I'm not anti-doctor, and it's.
I am anti-doctor, and I have my own compost piles.
I think we need healers that we can trust, who tell us the truth, and Dr. Buttar's. He's doing it. I mean, look. If I have something I'm not going to be able to solve, I'm going to give. I know who I'm calling.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a strong endorsement, and to me, that's the most generous compliment. Thank you.
Yes, that's okay. I mean, we have gone so far into overtime, extra innings. I don't know if the audience is still here, but they probably are, because I've been as fascinated as anything. And when we are, they are. And I appreciate you both. You really do strengthen the concept and the core belief system here on this show that we do. And every day I say this, and it even gets stronger every week when we get together for Advanced Medicine. And that is simply that the power to heal is yours.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.